All right, let's do this. Hi, everybody. My name is Richard.lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Today, I have Gordon Firemark with me. He's been on the podcast two times. Today is his third time. So we were talking before about bringing him back again for other stuff that I'm trying to do. So thank you, Gordon, for being here.
Hey, Richard,
Today,
always a pleasure.
Today we're going to talk about AI in the entertainment world. A lot of people have heard about Hollywood and deep fakes and all that. So we got to talk about that, what it
Yeah.
means for content creators and all that. So I'm looking forward for that interview. Please, Gordon, tell a little bit, 2 minute, who is Gordon Firemark, and we'll start from there.
Well, Gordon Firemark is a lawyer, an entertainment media and business lawyer. I've been doing what I do for about 32 years now, helping creative people to navigate the legal and business labyrinth of the entertainment and the media industries. And lately, they've been calling me the podcast lawyer because I work with a lot of podcasters and help them understand the law and make smart deals that make sense and protect themselves with business structures and intellectual property protection and contracts with the people they work with. So AI, this topic is a good one. It's a hot one right now. We don't have a lot of answers, but we have a lot of questions and issues that we'll be able to talk about today.
So, what's your whole take about that now, right now, at the moment?
You know, I think AI is a really powerful tool. When I talk about AI, I'm talking about these GPT large language models. There's other kinds of AI that are a little less of a thing right now, but I think they're powerful tools. And if we look at them as tools and not threats, I think we can manage and corral them in ways that will let them work for us and not against us. But there is that fear, and there's that. Actually, I just saw a headline this morning, a report that said that AI could lead to an extinction level event for humans, which strikes me as probably a bit of hyperbole. But I guess if the machines decide that humans are a pestilence or something, they might at some point try to take us all out, and then we have um, the future as foretold by James Cameron in Terminator. But I think we're a ways off from that. But right now, there are lots of facets to the concerns around AI. But first off, it's this powerful tool. People are concerned. The creative community is very concerned that it's going to replace them or be used as a tool to at least partially replace them. And that's what the strikes last summer had with the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild, both raising big concerns about producers using machines to replicate the people and take work days away from writers and actors and those kinds of things. And it seems to have actually come to pass. Apparently, Amazon, one of its movies that it was putting together, they finished it by using some AI tools because there was a strike going on. And so they did, instead of having reshoots where you bring the actors and folks back to do their jobs, they just had a machine do it. And so that's got the community in a bit of an uproar right now. On the writing side, of course, there's all kinds of interesting questions about where do these machines get their source material, and is the output that they create confused, too similar to the works that it ingested on the first end. The copyright questions are big, and there's a handful of lawsuits that are slowly wending their way into the courts right now. So lots of activity without a lot of answers right now.
Are you concerned of what's going to happen in the future?
Um, yes, modestly. I mean, look, I've been doing my work and I've had my career. I wouldn't say it's almost over, but I'm well established, and I'm not too worried about the AI systems replacing me before I'm ready to be replaced. But that is a concern I know some even lawyers have, and it's certainly the concern that the creative community has because there are already systems that can make music without any human intervention other than a quick prompt, and we've seen the deep fakes and the um, uh, well, even this week, we're hearing about Princess Kate and her Photoshop job on that picture of the of the royal family. Um, it's all over the place. These tools are really ubiquitous, and um, if we're not careful, they will start to mess with things. I guess you could say. So, um, in the political arena, we worry about deep fake video that shows the president saying or doing something that never really happened, or bots that are, chat bots that are on Twitter and Threads and Facebook and LinkedIn and all those kinds of things where they're spreading information or disinformation. And these technologies are getting good enough that they can really seem like it's a human on the other end and continue to interact. And it's more than just one bogus post. It turns into a whole chain of things with people following. So lots to worry about. But like I said, we've been here before with other new technologies. Photographers were all up in arms when things like Photoshop came about. And now you show me a photographer who doesn't use Photoshop. Um, designers, same issues with designers, same issues with, when television came in, the film industry was scared and they found ways to make them work together. So that's the goal.
So, any cases that you heard about or know about in regards to all that, whether it's in film and music?
Yeah, yeah. There are a few cases going on. One involves, well, there's a case in England dealing with the video, the visuals, the image creation tools. Stable Diffusion, I think, is the primary defendant in that case. And companies, stock photo companies like Getty Images, are suing, saying, "Hey, you scanned our whole database to access this training material without our permission, and then now you can, with a prompt, make an image that looks just like one of ours or uses pieces of ours and things." And that case seems to be moving forward. There have been some speed bumps for the plaintiffs in there. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., there's been a couple of cases. There's one that's been led by the plaintiff, Sarah Silverman, the comedian. She and a number of other authors are suing basically on the same principle. Hey, you couldn't have possibly made these tools give these kinds of outputs if you hadn't copied our books entirely on the input side and to train the machines. There have been, and also the outputs are too similar and those kinds of things. The courts have dismissed a bunch of those claims on the grounds that they aren't stating enough of a claim, or they're not they're just not robust enough in their pleading, and so they're at a stage now where they get another chance to come back into court and reassert some of those complaints and things, and then eventually the case will move forward. Similar case involving the New York Times is suing OpenAI and Microsoft for their tools because apparently after a few tries, well, someone says it's hundreds of tries, but the point was someone was able to get the AI to spit out the verbatim text of a New York Times article. And, how could you do that without copying? And so that case is also moving forward. And I don't know exactly where that is posturally, but all of these cases have been, filed within the last 3 to 6 months. And so it's very early in the game. These kinds of lawsuits tend to take years to move through the courts.
So, in regards now to content creation and all that, whether you're making music or TV or you're doing content like podcasters or anybody's doing content on social media, how do you see that going forward? I guess now, like, with the ownership, the IP, how do you see that evolving? I'm mute. I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the great questions. It's one of the other facets of what we are having to think about here, and that is, one side is, look, the machines have taken my stuff and are copying it without my permission, but the other side is, yeah, we it's a useful tool and we use it all the time, and the in most countries now, the law seems to say if a human didn't author the material, it's not entitled to copyright protection. So the way the U.S. is handling it is that if a human prompts the machine, gets something from it, and then builds on it or adds to it, the added stuff that comes from the human creation is protected, but the underlying AI generated material is not. And that's a pretty consistent finding with, historically, there have been cases involving people trying to claim that the painting that was made by an elephant with a brush in his trunk, and the Copyright Office there also said, no, that's not human generated, so it's not entitled to copyright. And there was a case involving some primate called a scarlet macaque that took a selfie with a photographer's camera, a bunch of selfies actually, and the same issue. No copyright in those images because it wasn't made by a person. So what that means for creators that use these tools is you better bring enough of your own creative work and not rely entirely on the machine. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to stop other people from copying that thing that you had the AI create for you. And so, don't ask the AI to write a book and just slap a cover on it and say, okay, this is mine. Not really going to work that way. And I know some people who are doing exactly that. I use the tool on the creation side quite a lot for fleshing out the idea and turning it into an outline, and sometimes even writing parts of script for a podcast episode or a video I'm going to make. But then, I'm really going in and treating that as the raw material that I am then shaping into the finished work. And I'm not too worried about, someone else coming along and copying and me having to prove what I created versus what the machine created. So, yeah, there are some concerns on that end as well. The other side of it also is, as I said, the deep fakes and deep fake is the right term. It's so easy now to replicate the sound of their voice, and even video images now can be made, just based by typing a prompt in. Give me a video of President Biden talking about this and saying the phrase, use the force, Luke. And, I think we would have some it would be hard to distinguish it from real at this point. A few months ago, I used a tool to see if I could make it sound like me speaking, and I gave it a bunch of text. I actually had it recite the Gettysburg Address, and I played it on the speakers here in my office, and my kids came in and, Dad, why are you reciting that Abraham Lincoln thing? So they couldn't tell the difference from the other room. So, and these tools are just getting better and better. So it's something we have to watch out for. And I think celebrities who derive value and compensation from the use of their names and images and likeness and those kinds of things, they're the ones that have real big concerns. Is if I don't need you, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to record your voice to do a voiceover for an ad, I can just I can tell the machine, say this in the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's losing money, he's losing opportunity, and he's maybe being associated with products and services that he wouldn't normally do. That's a pretty big concern. There are some laws already that help protect against that, but we haven't tested them in the AI landscape. So I think that's what we'll be looking at the next 5 or 10 years, probably.
Okay. Two things that I want to forget. I want to go back to the Arnold, thing. Well, let's go back to generative. When the AI generates something, the person could still get in trouble if they get something from the AI and trying to produce a content or even a piece of it.
Could the user of the AI get in trouble for? Well, yeah. I mean, I think that if I sit down and I prompt the machine and it outputs something that is strikingly similar to a work that somebody already created, that a copyrighted protected work, that copyright owner could come and sue me. And, of course, my defense is going to be, well, the AI spit that out. I didn't, and I'm not sure that that would immunize me from the copying because I should have known or should have checked or something. But then it would also maybe bring the AI into the equation. And who do I countersue saying, "Hey, I asked you for original stuff and you gave me copies"? So yeah, I think there is some risk there. Um, there have been another interesting side of this is that the AIs make stuff up. I mean, it's what they're there for, right? But there are folks, there have been a number of situations now where lawyers have used an AI to write a brief that they're going to submit to the court. And then the brief includes citations to cases. Of course, here's the precedent for this principle that I'm talking about. And the judge is reading the thing, goes to look at that case and finds out it doesn't exist. It's an invention of the AI. Well, that's a pretty irresponsible behavior by the lawyers, and the judges aren't having it. They're um, punishing, and I think one lawyer's even been disbarred for really not doing his job and being dishonest with the court about things. So um, I could see that same thing being a problem when we see AI being used in the medical world or other arenas, not just these sort of more creative fields, but yeah, I worry about the AI hallucinating the answer to something that isn't the right answer. So,
Going back to the book, you were saying if someone
yep,
creates a book and then they put their thing in it, maybe two, three things, that goes back to well, one thing is, let's say you use whatever, let's say ChatGPT, whatever, to
yeah.
create a book. Who is who owns the IP?
Well, the answer seems to be nobody. There's no ownership to be claimed because the machine generated it, so no human, and therefore nobody's allowed to claim ownership. And that's the problem, is that if I rely too heavily on these tools to create my thing, it's not really my thing. It's anybody's who wants it. It's in the public domain, and so it can be copied freely without any liability. Now, of course, nobody just takes the output from the GPT and sends it off to the printer. There is some human intervention, but then we get into this question of, is it enough? How much was it? What specifically is protected versus what's not? Because the way the government looks at it is um, the machine's output isn't protected, the human input is. So the human output, I should say, is. So if I edit the thing and I add a sentence here and I add a paragraph there and I put an illustration, maybe the act of compiling and assembling all of that stuff counts for some copyright value, but it better demonstrate a real originality of creative expression in order to get that protection.
So you think at this point it wouldn't pass, like to have the ownership? Let's say the the AI spits like three-quarter, well, everything, and then the human puts his touch on it, let's say 5%, whatever.
Yeah.
It's still
Well, it would
pass.
it the human would be able to claim ownership of the work, but if someone came and copied and the human wants to sue for copyright infringement, first off, they have to register the copyright. And registering a copyright requires that you tell the Copyright Office, hey, this is based on other material that came from either the public domain or a prior work, or you have to disclaim other people's contributions. And AI is one of those things that you have to disclaim. So now you're saying, well, the text came from here, but the graphic design and the cover, those kinds of things. And then the defendant in the case says, well, but I copied the text, which was the AI generated. There's no copyright to protect there. So please dismiss the case, Your Honor. And if the applicant or the person who created the thing didn't tell the Copyright Office about the involvement of the AI, and it becomes apparent that that's the case, then the registration is invalid, and you're thrown out of court because you didn't properly register the copyright. So I mean, some of this is it's lawyer tricks basically, but very technically speaking, yeah, it's hard to claim ownership of something that you didn't create. And uh, this is a concern for companies where the employees are using the AI to generate the documents or advertising copy or things like that, and then somebody else comes along and copies that stuff, and there's a lot of finger pointing about, well, where did this come from, and it's just yet another issue that we have to litigate in these cases that will keep us lawyers busy, but make things tougher for the community out there using these tools.
So right now, someone going into that direction, there might be a lot of like hurdles, like they're gonna have to get by to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my advice to a creator would be, don't rely exclusively on the machine. Use it in that sort of the way I do, that I describe myself, is use it to create the outline, use it to flesh out the idea, maybe use it for research, ask it the questions so you have answers. But then when it comes time to actually write the paragraphs of text, sit down and write them. You know, don't rely on the machine to do all the work, I guess. And if you're writing in your own words from ideas and material that you got from the AI, that doesn't have to be disclosed. It's when the material on the page came from the machine itself that you have to disclose that and disclaim that material. So I don't think there's any answer but to create original material from your brain and your heart. And frankly, that's the stuff that resonates with audiences anyway. Audiences somehow intuitively know when there's been a human touch. And yesterday I was on this webinar. I was attending a webinar that was about music and AI. And this one composer said, look, I'm never going to be out of a job because the machine can never bring that human touch that I bring, that sense of intuition, that sense of heart and the connection to what this was a film score guy. He says, you know, I make the music fit the scene, and the scene is made better because of it. The AI generated music just isn't as good. It isn't as uh, what's the word? You know, it just doesn't have the same feel. And so, yeah, there will always be those low budget situations where people use these tools to replace the human intervention, and that they'll be low budget for that. They'll seem low budget because of that. So that's sort of the line right now. Bring your human side to things. Don't rely on machines.
So speaking of the Arno stuff, like using his voice, whatever, to replace
Yeah.
and all that. But that was the whole thing for the Hollywood thing. I think because I know what was happening, but I wasn't following exactly. They're not going to use AI to replace the actors or whatever, or the voices or all these things at that level, no?
Well, apparently they're doing it. They were doing it during the strike because, hey, we can't finish this movie because the actors aren't available. So I think it was a pretty big movie title. I don't remember which one it was, but one of the ones that Amazon Studios put out. And yeah, the actors that are in the movie are saying, "Wait, I never acted that scene. I never did that." And that was what the strike largely was about. Was, hey, don't do these things. And the company now has basically proved that they were right to be concerned about it. And yes, they signed the contract, so they're not going to do it the same way going forward. But what happens next time if the union goes on strike and the companies just say, we don't need you, forget it, we'll do it ourselves? So it's a possible weakness in the actor's position. The deal that was made as part of the settlement of the strike, the resolution of the strike, the new contract does require that when the studios are allowed to use these AI tools as long as they pay the actor as if they had had the workday. So whether you show up on the set or you're invented in the machine, the actor's getting paid like they showed up on the set and did the work. That way, there's no argument that they were deprived of the opportunity to work. The bigger concern becomes, well, when you use that material that they did they did perform to train the machine to create scenes that never existed and those kinds of things, well, then maybe the actor would have had something to say. Maybe the actor would have brought their own, again, their human touch, their art to the thing, and it lessens the whole industry. It lessens the actor. It demeans the film itself, and all those are the kinds of concerns that the creative community has had to wrestle with. Meanwhile, labor costs keep going up, and the producers have to worry about that and figure out ways to again to use these tools effectively. I think it's one thing to fix a scene, replace a word that got bobbled in the production, or something like that. What we used to call Foley or ADR, automated dialogue replacement. Um, to use the machines to do some of that is logical. It makes perfect sense. But on the writer's side, should a producer just be able to type into a machine, "Hey, create a story about a boy and his father and their dog, and the trouble they have when someone comes to town," and all of a sudden now you've got the whole outline for a script, and then it says, "Okay, give me a scene about this where this happens," and now you've got the scenes, and then you paste them all together. No screenwriter was ever involved in the process, right? And that's a concern as well. So on the writers union, they basically have required that for television shows, a certain number of writers have to be on the payroll. Basically, have to be employed. As long as you've got them there, you're going to use them. And the same thing, the machine can be used, the AIs can be used as long as the writers get paid anyway. That kind of stuff. So again, it can be used as a tool, but not as a replacement. And that was the goal this last summer with these two strikes. So a lot to digest.
So, so if we go now to the music side now,
Yeah.
I think the industry won't recognize. I don't know how the artists are using the AI, but I know like there's songs that the artists didn't make that were out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, one of the early awarenesses we all have of AI was when there was this mashup or this alleged duet between, I want to say, The Weeknd and I forgot who the other artist was, and it had never happened. There was no recording session where they did this thing, and so that became and it was a popular song on Spotify until the record company had them take it down. So that's just evidence that it can happen. I think that record producers and composers are using these tools to speed up the work that they do. A lot of orchestration and arrangement can be done by the machines, and so maybe that puts orchestrators and arrangers out of work, and they have valid concerns. But when the machine creates the melody and the chord progression and all of that, that's when it starts to still have that feel of artificiality or something. But they're getting better. These tools are eventually going to be indistinguishable, and so I think there's a moral, ethical component to this that we haven't really talked about. But I think that those who employ creators and are putting work out there, I think they need to, at the very least, tell the consumer, the audience, this came from a machine, or this didn't. I think that it's actually going to become a badge of honor to be able to say this is entirely human created content, and audiences, I think, may appreciate that.
That's like going back to the sample days when people were sampled.
Yeah.
You had to write contains a sample from this.
Yeah, exactly. And the owners of the recording that the sample was taken from would get paid. That's one of the concerns in all of these fields, is that the owners of the material that the machine learned from aren't getting any money. They're not getting paid or compensated for it. And more importantly, they were never asked permission in the first place. And that's sort of the whole point of this idea of ownership, this idea of copyright or trademark or patent or whatever, is that the owner has a right to control what happens with their work. It's sometimes viewed as a right of paternity, the ownership, the parentage of things. We want to guide our children so they become productive members of society, not just another hack that's spewing out stuff. So we we have this discomfort with the way the machines were trained, and that's what the lawsuits that are going on are really about right now.
So now would be a good time to, I know it was put off a little while. We didn't hear about too much about the blockchain
Yeah,
because that technology I heard like on a AI podcast that probably that's going to come like connect together of the ownership and all that and solve the problem of ownership, who owns the the thing. So with the
I think there's some truth in. I think the computer scientists who are bullish on the blockchain, and the blockchain is powerful and very useful tool also, but I think that they are, um, I won't say wishful thinking, but I think that their vision of that solution doesn't really address the concerns that the creators have here. Now, certainly creators have started putting digital fingerprints of sorts into their work, so we can tell when it came, when it, when there's a component of something that came from their thing. And I think what I hope what the outcome of some of these lawsuits will be requiring the AIs to look for a fingerprint or some kind of a flag or marker that says, "Hey, don't copy me." Or maybe it has to be an opt-in. You can go ahead and copy me in order to train the machines. But I think this is a bit of closing the barn doors after the horses are already out, because the training's happened. The machines have been learning for years now, and I don't know, other than what the New York Times wants the court to do is order the destruction of the data set, and that would set the AI folks back a number of years. So, um, yeah, that'll if the New York Times wins its lawsuit, that could be one of the outcomes. Although I think that's a pretty nuclear option.
but it is in still going back on the blockchain, it is still an opportunity for them like
Oh yeah, yeah,
to connect the two.
yeah. I mean, the blockchain and encryption and all all of these. Well, blockchain can be used as a form of encryption to essentially generate these massive encryption keys, right? So I'm not an expert about blockchain by any stretch, as I've just revealed. So, um, but yeah, my understanding. I mean, look, and one of the great things about blockchain is it can be used for electronic contracting in a way that we can tell who signed on to the contract by their blockchain sort of signature on things, which I think is a tremendously powerful tool. And I think it'll be probably the mechanism for licensing content will rely on blockchain a lot going forward. I think we're a few years shy of that yet, but it's getting there.
So what about now regulations and all that? So how is all that gonna happen now?
You know, that's a good question. Right now, here in the U.S., we're in a situation where we rely on the Congress to make these kinds of laws, but we can't rely on the Congress to accomplish much of anything these days, other than finger pointing at each other and fighting over silly political things rather than getting the real work of government done. And so I'm not too optimistic that we'll see a lot of regulation. Well, if we see regulation, it's going to be the heavy-handed kind of thing that is over inclusive and creates problems where there were none before because it's overreaching and overbroad. Um, and so that it'll take a number of years probably to refine and carve exceptions and things like that. I wish that wasn't the case, and we're due for a major update of the copyright law. It's been almost 50 years since the copyright law was revised, and I think it's time to do that. But again, we have to have a functioning Congress that can actually do anything for that to happen. And it's been years since we had that. So, without getting too political, um, politics is in the way right now.
So on the legal side now, the lawyers have they don't have a playbook now to how to to play this game now with all that, no?
Yeah, I think the lawyers that are handling these big cases, the representatives from the Getty Images and the Anderson case and the Sarah Silverman case and the New York Times case, they're writing the playbook as we go, and we're going to sort of find out as the courts address their different arguments and different kinds of issues, and sort of we're going to see the framework of things start to come together. We may not need the courts, the government, excuse me, to come in, and the Congress to come in and make laws if the courts do a decent job of figuring this stuff out. The One of the interesting things about our legal system is that we use analogy and we'll rely on a precedent from another situation to make a rule about something more modern. There are cases involving copyrightability of phone books that we're now using to figure out, well, okay, is that going to affect the AI? Is something that is, just an alphabetical listing not copyrightable? Well, that's sort of, if the AI is just compiling data, we can't claim a copyright on that either. So those are the kinds of things where the government, not the government, excuse me, where the courts can sort of move us forward by looking to the past as precedent for what they're dealing with now. And a number of the case law in the copyright field in particular are being implemented on a daily basis and used to sort of figure out where these boundaries are. One of the big defenses that the AI tool makers are all claiming is that the way they've used the copyrighted material as training, because that's educational, maybe it falls under the fair use defense. And I'm not sure I buy that because it's wholesale copying, but that's an argument. And so eventually we'll have courts look at it and say, yeah, that looks like fair use. Just like last year, we had a case involving Andy Warhol's estate and the photograph of Prince that was on the cover of the magazines. Um, that changed the law of fair use a bit, made it a little harder to claim fair use. So the law evolves and develops over time as new unique situations are presented. And if this isn't a new unique situation, I don't know what is.
So, last words in regards to everything we've talked about. Your thoughts on the whole thing, where this is going? I know we can't predict the future, but
Yeah,
at the moment,
I think I would say, first off, my advice to anybody who's involved in this is don't panic. Let's not assume that the sky is falling. Um, let's be patient and let things shake out. Be creative. I already said, bring your own originality to things, and you don't have to worry too much about this, whether it's copyrightable question. And maybe I think it's a good idea if you're putting stuff on the web, make sure there's a statement or a terms of service or a privacy policy that specifically says this material may not be used for purposes other than, and list all the allowed purposes. So they at least you have a colorable claim to a contract remedy if your material is used without your permission. The problem is nobody was anticipating this until it became too late. And then, all that material that was out on the internet got ingested before anybody could sort of close the barn doors. So be patient, wait for more guidance, and be creative and original. And I think we'll get through this.
and what about like protection for the creator itself?
Well, when you create original material, protect it, register your copyrights, look at trademark law if there's a reason to protect what you're creating with a brand identity stuff. And be disciplined about record keeping, making sure you can prove you created it, when you created it, how you created it, those kinds of things, which has always been good advice, but artists haven't had to think too hard about it in the past. But now I think you have to be able to show, no, I didn't use an AI to make this. That's a whole new wrinkle that we have to think about. So discipline and systems are important.
But let's say protection from, let's say you use something from the AI and someone would want to come after you because they see that you use some of their stuff that they think that is similar to that. How can someone protect themselves from that?
Well, I mean, always check and just be open to the possibility that the material coming from the AI is not as original as you would hope, that it's coming from somewhere. Um, that's an interesting question. I don't think there's going. I have yet to, except on the large scale, these New York Times and Getty Images and those kinds of folks. I don't think that the casual user of ChatGPT needs to be too concerned about being sued by some owner of copyright, unless they sort of have deliberately tried to get the machine to give me an output that looks just like that, that other person's work. I think most of the time that's not who these lawsuits are going to be targeting, at least not in the near term. Um, who knows? As the law develops and as the cases move through, there may be more plaintiffs in these situations. Um, but as I said, we need to give it a little time to breathe and figure out where things are going.
Do you feel comfortable you at the moment dealing with that? If there's any cases that comes to you?
Well, I don't really do cases. I'm not a litigation attorney, so I'm not the one in going into court on these kinds of things. I am the one advising clients, hopefully before the trouble starts. And I am giving them the advice I'm giving here is let's not rely too heavily on the machines. And because that can have the negative impact of outputting something that is too close, it's a copy, and but also because that it doesn't create a property right in the material you're making. So yeah, my advice is let's keep originality in the equation. Let's bring human authorship and human intervention back up as the primary way of creating things, and let's use these as tools and not as a substitute for the human touch.
I know I was going to end with something, but something just came up my mind while
Sure.
you were talking because I know we've talked about trademarks and patents and all that.
Yeah.
All uh, uh, these things are gonna. How can I say that? Uh, how these things like affect can affect with the AI like can go in conflict when we talk about trademarks and
Yeah.
patents.
Great question. Trademark is an interesting one because I think you could register a trademark for, say, a logo that the AI generated because we're not claiming that the logo is original. We're claiming that it's associated with this product or service. So I don't think there's a big impact in the trademark arena uh, on that front about protectability. Um, it may be that we start seeing logos that are more and more confusingly similar because the AIs are going to be good at identifying the high points of good quality logos. That may be an issue where we end up seeing people denied a trademark because it's too close, too similar to another one that may or may not have been generated by AI. In the patent arena, I think that um, because patent does require a kind of human inventiveness, I would call it, where you come up with some kind of a unique, non-obvious solution to a problem. Maybe it's a formula or an algorithm or a system or a process. The machines, I think, could start to generate and create those kinds of things. And I think the patent office is taking the same view that if it isn't human generated, it's not going to be protectable. That's the whole idea of the public domain is let's use these things to build as the foundation for future development. And so, yeah, this whole category of intellectual property does raise some really interesting questions. Here's another one. What if I ask the AI to generate a recipe for a cola beverage, and it comes up with the exact same formula as original Coca-Cola? That's a very, very closely guarded secret. But with enough computing power, especially as we get into quantum computing in the next few years, enough computing power, it's going to be possible for it to iterate and iterate and iterate and identify exactly maybe somebody even takes a bottle of Coke and puts it into a gas chromatograph or something and can identify the exact chemical composition. And the machine could figure out what proportions of ingredients it would take to arrive at that composition. Um, does that trade secret, that recipe, then lose its value? Or is there some way that the Coca-Cola company could continue to say, wait a minute, that's ours, you can't use it, even though the machine spit it out after all that trial and error, all that scientific reverse engineering, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. The more
That's
we ask questions, the more questions we get as answers.
that's
So
that's some pretty interesting stuff that we're ending with now.
yeah, yeah,
That's really cool. Well, pretty cool in a way.
yeah.
So thanks, Gordon, for being here. I wanted to do that episode, so I was really scratching my heads on the questions to ask. So it kind of flew. It kind of went like smoothly. So it's pretty good.
Well, good.
Uh,
Well, that's the nature of this, right? I mean, as I said, the it's hard to know what questions to ask because there's so many possibilities of where this can lead. And so I thought, yeah, some great questions and gave me plenty of chance to ramble and maybe even uh, tie knots around myself a little bit.
it was good, perfect. Don't worry
Thanks.
about it. All right. So where can people find you, Gordon?
Well, GordonFiremark.com is the home of my online presence for things like my online courses for creators and businesses and those kinds of things. If you're more interested in uh, just hearing what I have to say, follow me on YouTube. It's G Firemark is the name. I do a podcast called Legit Podcast Pro. I also do one called Entertainment Law Update. And firemark.com is my law firm website. So it's all based on my family name. So Firemark is the way to find me.
Any stuff that you're working right now?
I'm always working on something. I'm dealing with some interesting issues that actually have nothing to do with technology, just the nature of musical performances on live stages and things. There's some stuff going on with stage versions of stories that have been in film and television and involve a lot of music. And the owners of some of that music have been feeling like they're getting the short end of the stick. So I'm helping them navigate that. I'm working with the podcast community. I'm going to be presenting at some conferences coming up here soon on what to watch out for as a creator when you're joining a podcast network or starting a podcast network as well. Those kinds of things. And what else is on my plate these days? A couple of movie deals, a couple of theater projects. I have a really satisfying and enjoyable practice because it's diverse. I've got a lot of different plates to spin and keep in the air at the same time.
All right. Thanks, Gordon, for being here and doing this with me. So I really appreciate it.
Richard,
Uh,
thanks for having me, man. It's been great.
and no problem. If there's anything in the entertainment, you're gonna probably be the first person I'm gonna call.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you everybody for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Welcome to a better lifestyle. My name is Richard.lesperance, and I go by the name of Richard. No, my name is Richard.lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. And I was with Gordon Firemark, and we'll see you on the next episode, everybody. Bye bye.